Steroids and wrestling, a combination that sparked controversy for decades. Welcome back to Wrestling Sphere, where we uncover the truths the ring won't always show you. Today we're diving deep into the world of muscle, fame, and the pressure to perform. From legendary icons to rising stars, these 20 WWE wrestlers were either caught, accused, or admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs. Some paid the price, others denied it, and a few never recovered. This isn't just about scandal. It's about the darker side of chasing greatness in sports entertainment. Let's uncover the stories behind the physiques. Number 1. Brock Lesnar. Looking back at Brock Lesnar's early days in WWE, we saw a muscular giant, massive yet surprisingly agile. When he left the ring to pursue a career in the UFC, Lesnar had to reshape his physique, trimming down to gain speed while maintaining his trademark power. This transformation sparked public speculation that he may have turned to banned substances to enhance his condition. Lesnar firmly denied all accusations, insisting he had never failed a drug test. He confidently claimed that his success was built on nothing but hard work. However, in 2016, when he made a high-profile return to the UFC to face a top-tier opponent, test results revealed the presence of an estrogen blocker, a substance that helps the body boost testosterone production and mitigate the side effects of anabolic steroids. It allowed him to stay in peak condition, strong enough to handle grueling matches. As a result, Lesnar was handed a 1-year suspension. Though he never stepped into the octagon again, aside from a dramatic headline-grabbing comeback, his noticeably altered physique, showing clear signs of hormonal enhancement, remained a hot topic among fans across forums. Some argued it was a necessary move to stay on top, while others saw it as proof that even legends like Brock Lesnar, when desperate to maintain their legacy, can be tempted down a risky path. Number 2. Triple H. When Triple H made his WWE comeback in early 2002 after a serious injury, fans weren't just thrilled to see the game back, they were stunned by his new look. Gone was the refined Hunter Hearst Helmsley. In his place stood a hulking warrior, packed with muscle, looking as if he'd been carved from steel. The transformation left many wondering, was it really just hours in the gym? There was never any concrete evidence or direct admission from Triple H that he used performance enhancers. But eagle-eyed fans couldn't help but question it, especially when comparing his physique just 2 years later, around 2004 to 2005, during a period when he and his wife Stephanie McMahon were trying to conceive. His once chiseled body appeared more bloated and less defined than before. For someone as devoted to training as Triple H, a sudden dip in physical form was hard to blame solely on a hectic schedule. This shift led many to believe he may have previously used hormone boosters and later stopped, possibly for health reasons, fertility concerns, or simply to align more with his evolving role as a public-facing executive. Although he was never caught or failed any drug test, Triple H's vocal criticism of others for using banned substances has only made the speculation around his own transformation more complicated. Number 3. Chris Masters. When Chris Masters first appeared on WWE screens in the mid-2000s, he instantly became a standout thanks to his jaw-dropping physique, a living Greek statue in the world of wrestling. Draped in a flowing robe and walking with swagger, the masterpiece embodied the very definition of sculpted muscle and visual perfection. However, that image shifted noticeably when he returned in 2006, leaner, lighter, and far less intimidating than before. That comeback marked a turning point in Chris's career. The bulging biceps and massive shoulders were gone, replaced by a significantly slimmer frame. Interestingly, one of the first people to welcome Masters back was Triple H, another WWE body icon, as if the old guard and the new reality were colliding. In later interviews, particularly one with Chris Van Vliet, Masters openly admitted he had struggled with painkiller addiction during his time away. The need to quit and undergo a strict recovery process had a profound effect on his body. It wasn't just about losing weight, it was about losing the larger-than-life appearance that had once defined his brand. Though he never confessed to using steroids, the visual contrast was enough to spark widespread speculation. Chris Masters may no longer be the masterpiece in the traditional sense, but his story stands as a clear example of the trade-off between spotlight glory and personal awakening. Number 4. Maven Huffman. Among the few wrestlers brave enough to speak openly about the harsh truths behind WWE's chiseled bodies, Maven Huffman stands out in a unique way. No dodging, no sugarcoating. On his personal YouTube channel, Maven candidly revealed that he had used PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. What's notable is that he wasn't forced into it, but subtly nudged by a high-ranking backstage figure. While he didn't name names, many fans believe he was referring to John Laurinaitis. With an average build and a fairly unremarkable style, Maven felt the pressure to appear more credible in the eyes of fans, especially when facing off against physical powerhouses like Batista, Kane, and other larger opponents. And like a familiar pattern, the moment his body reached its most defined and muscular form was also when he received the biggest push of his career. In a jaw-dropping interview segment, Maven claimed that during his time in WWE, as many as 90% of the roster were using some form of enhancement. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. For him, it wasn't something he was proud of, but something he believed had to be done to survive in such a fiercely competitive environment. Maven wasn't just a former Tough Enough champion. He became a living testament to the price of fame, where muscle wasn't built solely in the gym, but also fueled by pills behind the curtain. Number 5. The Rock. In Maven Huffman's eyes, no one is more admirable than The Rock, the man who quietly helped him cover travel expenses during his first year in WWE. But to the world, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is not just a Hollywood A-lister or wrestling icon. He's a muscular role model who commands attention wherever he goes. Still, The Rock's physical journey hasn't always been smooth sailing. The Great One once admitted to using anabolic steroids briefly during his college football days. However, the story that really caught people's attention began around 2010, when he shed the lean look he sported in his comedy film roles and returned to the massive, heavily muscled physique reminiscent of his WWE prime, arguably even bigger than before. This rapid and drastic transformation raised plenty of questions about how natural his training really was. John Cena openly pointed out a sensitive detail during their rivalry. The Rock had undergone gynecomastia surgery, an enlargement of male breast tissue commonly seen in steroid users. Although The Rock has consistently denied recent steroid use, fans and experts remain sharply divided. Some admire his hard work while others can't shake their doubts. Regardless, the Brahma Bull continues to maintain an incredible, sharply defined physique and appeared at WrestleMania 41 as a warrior ready to crush every limit, whether age or skepticism. Number 6. Rey Mysterio. When discussing WWE stars whose bodies changed dramatically after joining the company, Rey Mysterio is impossible to overlook. His image has long been tied to agility, speed, and technical skill, not sheer muscle mass. But looking back from his WCW days to his peak in WWE, fans can spot a quiet yet notable transformation. In WCW, Rey was the epitome of pure lucha libre style, compact, lightning fast, and airborne. Weighing only about 155 pounds, his body seemed almost weightless, as if a breeze could lift him. But moving to WWE, where most opponents outweighed him by 30 to 50 pounds, Rey had to adapt. He began putting on weight, at one point reaching around 175 pounds, with noticeably broader shoulders, chest, and arms. Gaining that extra mass didn't just change his wrestling style, it came with consequences. Rey's signature flips and his iconic 619 move now had to be executed with a heavier body, likely contributing to the gradual wear and tear on his knees. No one can count how many times Rey has had to take time off due to knee injuries, but with every comeback his physique showed subtle differences. While he has never admitted to using performance enhancers, the significant shift in his build and performance has led fans to question. For Rey Mysterio, the cost of surviving among giants may have meant trading some of his original pure agility for added strength and size, yet he has never lost the heart of a true lucha warrior. Number 7. Superstar Billy Graham. Before Hulk Hogan or any other muscle-bound icon stepped into the WWE ring, there was one man who laid the foundation for the modern superstar wrestler. Superstar Billy Graham. He wasn't just a phenomenon of the 70s with his flamboyant style, exaggerated promos, and bold gestures. He was the first to bring a bodybuilding physique into professional wrestling. At his peak, Billy Graham's body was truly rare. With biceps as big as watermelons and muscles rivaling legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he looked like he had walked straight out of a superhero's gym. What made Graham both controversial and courageous was his frankness about steroid use. He never hid it or made excuses. Steroids were simply part of the game he was willing to accept. However, what's built on drugs often comes with a price. When Graham returned to the WWF in the 80s, fans were shocked by his gaunt, thin frame, so different from the icon they once revered. This change wasn't just from aging but also the long-term effects of performance-enhancing drugs. In the last 2 decades of his life, Superstar battled numerous health issues, from liver and kidney problems to heart disease. Still, he never stayed silent. Billy Graham turned his painful experiences into lessons for younger wrestlers, constantly warning the next generation about the dangers of steroids. He passed away at 79, leaving behind a legacy defined not only by his victories inside the ring but also by the raw truth behind the muscle-bound spotlight. Number 8. Hulk Hogan. No one can deny Hulk Hogan's massive influence on WWE history, especially regarding physique and in-ring style. Hogan wasn't just a fan favorite. He set the standard for countless wrestlers who came after him, inspiring everything from walk and expressions to that signature giant frame. Yet behind this glory lies a long story of performance-enhancing drug use, a dark side few dared to speak openly about. Hogan once reached his physical peak thanks largely to steroids and other supplements. But when steroid investigations in WWE heated up in the early 90s, Hogan, and many others, had to stop to avoid legal trouble. Around 1993 to 1994, when Hogan left WWF and joined WCW, his body noticeably thinned out, losing much of its former bulk. This shift wasn't random. It was a direct result of the US government's crackdown on steroid use in wrestling, especially following the landmark Vince McMahon trial. Many wrestlers who had long relied on steroids faced sudden, dramatic body changes. Hogan was no exception. Still, Hulk Hogan remained a legend in the eyes of fans, not just for his muscles but as a cultural icon and inspiration for generations of WWE lovers. Yet, the visible weight loss during this period serves as undeniable proof of the price paid when stepping away from the steroid cycle. Number 9. Vince McMahon. You can't talk about WWE's most powerful figure without mentioning Vince McMahon, especially when discussing changes in physique linked to steroid use. During the infamous steroid trial of the 1990s, McMahon was at the center of the storm, prosecuted by the US government over allegations related to performance-enhancing drugs in WWE. Notably, investigations confirmed he had used steroids for several years prior. Looking back at Vince McMahon's earliest appearances in the late 90s, it's clear he maintained a large, muscular frame, classic signs of performance enhancer use. This was further evidenced by his frequent ring attire, often loose-fitting shirts or t-shirts, likely to conceal signs of gynecomastia, that is, the enlargement of male breast tissue, a common side effect of long-term anabolic steroid use. Despite facing many challenges, especially in later years as age and pressure took their toll, McMahon managed to keep a relatively fit physique. While his face and skin showed signs of aging, his build still reflected someone who had maintained training and likely continued using performance aids. After that high-profile trial, Vince McMahon remained a focal point of steroid-related controversy, particularly when WWE faced the tragic Chris Benoit family incident in 2007. That tragedy reignited debates about drug use in pro wrestling, and McMahon's shadow remains inseparable from that story. It's a stark example of how deeply steroids influenced WWE, from the top leadership down to the wrestlers in the ring. Number 10. Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit is among the wrestlers whose physique changed dramatically due to steroid use, with a tragic story beneath those chiseled muscles. His nearly career-long use of performance-enhancing substances is widely believed to have played a significant role in the severe mental breakdown he later suffered. Reviewing Benoit's career, it's easy to see his body grew increasingly muscular and defined over time. The peak of this transformation came when he joined WWE, a place famous for larger-than-life wrestlers with imposing physiques. In such a brutal competitive environment, Benoit felt that using enhancers was essential not only to survive but to climb to the top. He wasn't just aiming to maintain his form, he wanted to push himself into WWE's elite ranks, the so-called Land of Giants. Steroids and anabolic drugs became tools to boost his strength and endurance, significantly improving his physique to face opponents who often had superior size and power. However, Benoit's story serves as a powerful warning about the dark side of steroid abuse in wrestling. The impact went far beyond his body, severely affecting his mental health and emotional well-being. His tragic downfall sparked intense discussions about the pressures and irreversible consequences tied to performance-enhancing drug use in professional wrestling. 11. Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was one of WWE's brightest icons, a technical genius who captivated audiences every time he stepped into the ring. But behind the cheers and the spotlight lay a harsh reality. Eddie's body was being pushed far beyond its limits. To meet the company's strict physical standards, he fell into the dangerous cycle of steroid and muscle-enhancing drug use. The physical changes in Eddie weren't immediately obvious to everyone, but looking back at his early career compared to his prime years on SmackDown in the early 2000s, the difference was undeniable. Broader shoulders, a fuller chest, bulging biceps. A new physique emerged, but the cost was a body gradually worn down day by day. Sleepless nights, near heart attacks, and the constant feeling of never being good enough to stay at the top haunted him to the very end. His sudden death in 2005 from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy shocked the wrestling world. At his funeral, his brother Mando Guerrero apologized to Vince McMahon for any media troubles Eddie's death might cause. A bitter apology, considering the company itself had played a major role in creating the intense pressure that pushed Eddie to the brink. He dedicated his entire life to pleasing the fans and the organization, but in return, it slowly consumed him from within. Eddie Guerrero, the lie, cheat, and steal persona in the ring, was ironically the most honest man, driven by a deep need to be recognized. Yet in that glamorous world, the truth was often the hardest thing to see. 12. Dynamite Kid. Dynamite Kid was the biggest inspiration to Chris Benoit. Both were smaller in stature but carried an unbreakable spirit that refused to back down to any giant. Dynamite paved the way for a generation of wrestlers who didn't need towering size to become legends. Yet ironically, the very standard he helped break free from became the cage that trapped him for the rest of his life. In a world where muscles were the currency, Dynamite Kid was forced to use steroids to maintain his position. Every time he faced a larger opponent, he pushed himself further, building more muscle, gaining more strength, and feeling the weight of ever-increasing pressure. Over time, the toll became undeniable. His reckless bumps and brutal matches severely damaged his spine, and eventually, a wheelchair became a permanent part of his life. Once half of the legendary British Bulldogs tag team alongside Davy Boy Smith, Dynamite electrified crowds with his fast, sharp, and decisive wrestling style. But when the spotlight faded, he grew gaunt and lost, to the point where it was hard to believe this was once an indomitable warrior. Worse still, he didn't just lose his health, he lost himself. In his final years, Dynamite Kid struggled with depression, bouts of violence toward his family, and lived in isolation. From a blazing pioneer, he became the ashes of a golden era, a heartbreaking testament to the price of fame, which demands the sacrifice of both soul and body. 13. Davy Boy Smith. Davy Boy Smith, famously known as the British Bulldog, was a bodybuilding icon in WWE throughout the 1980s and 90s. With his chiseled physique, bulging biceps, and signature ponytail, he embodied the wrestler archetype the company aspired to at the time: strong, muscular, and highly entertaining. But behind maintaining that impressive form for so many years was a sacrifice far greater than what fans saw in the ring. In 1992, he was fired from WWF amid controversies involving banned substances, specifically steroids. Yet that was just the beginning of his struggles. After leaving WWE, Davy continued wrestling in WCW, where he suffered a severe back injury from falling into a trap during a match. The persistent pain forced him to rely on morphine, which gradually turned into a nightmare. He became addicted to painkillers, truly a drug addict, both inside and outside the ring. His final WWE comeback in 1999 was met with sorrow rather than celebration. The sight of a frail, exhausted bulldog, stripped of his former glory, left fans heartbroken. He was no longer the indomitable warrior of old but more like a shadow, a ticking biological time bomb waiting to explode. In 2002, his heart finally gave out, ending the journey of one of wrestling's most iconic physiques. The man who once stood for raw muscular power was ironically taken down by the very thing that had made him stand out, a cruel twist of fate. 14. Test. When Test returned to WWE in 2006 as part of the revived ECW brand, many fans were stunned by the drastic change in his appearance. He still had his impressive height and the cold, confident demeanor that made him stand out in the early 2000s, but something was off. His body had ballooned unnaturally, especially around the stomach, a clear sign of prolonged steroid abuse. This was no longer the balanced, athletic Test fans once knew but a physique distorted by chemicals and the relentless pressures of the wrestling world. The use of banned substances didn't just stall his career, it led to his second WWE release and marked the beginning of a tragic downward spiral. After years battling addiction, Test seemed to catch a glimpse of hope in 2007 when he entered a rehabilitation program and declared he was turning his life around. In an interview, he showed determination to overcome his past demons and leave the darkness behind. Yet, nobody could foresee how fragile that light was against the storm ahead. By 2008 and early 2009, Test had fallen back into old patterns, abusing drugs, isolating himself, and cutting ties with close friends and family. In March 2009, he died alone, just days before his 34th birthday. Once a tag team partner of Scott Steiner, one of WWE's most extreme muscle-bound legends, Test's story stands as a bitter lesson on the heavy price paid when chasing physical ideals at any cost. His body swelled to meet expectations, only to crumble under the harsh reality. 15. Scott Steiner. If the last time you saw Scott Steiner in WWF was back in 1994, you might still remember him as a muscular, solidly built man, the classic image of a traditional wrestler. But when Steiner made his comeback in WCW as Big Papa Pump, few could recognize the man they once knew. This was no longer the Scott Steiner of old. He had transformed into a completely different creature, with muscles so swollen they seemed unreal, arms thick as stone pillars, and a chest unnaturally expanded to the extreme. Behind dark sunglasses and slicked-back platinum hair, Steiner dubbed himself the Big Bad Booty Daddy. A man not just looking to defeat opponents, but to shatter every physical standard that had ever existed in wrestling. He resembled a living sculpture, but instead of admiration, his exaggerated physique left people stunned and even overwhelmed by its sheer excess. The problem was, this body brought unavoidable suspicion along with it. Scott Steiner never publicly admitted to steroid use, nor did any drug test show he failed. Yet, when WWE once requested Steiner to undergo drug testing, he responded with a condition: "I'll take the test if Triple H does too." A brief statement, but enough to ignite controversy about double standards in the wrestling world. Whether you believe it or not, Scott Steiner's bizarre physique remains an unforgettable symbol, both astonishing and provoking the question: is it really worth pushing oneself to such extremes just to impress on the wrestling stage? 16. Buff Bagwell. A loyal right-hand man to Scott Steiner during WCW's prime, Buff Bagwell wasn't just a background player, he was a genuine physical icon. With the nickname Buff, Marcus Bagwell's entire image, value, and career revolved around his muscles. That powerful physique wasn't just an asset, it was a burden he felt compelled to maintain at all costs to avoid being left behind. Unlike many peers who cycled on and off steroids, Buff chose a harsher path: continuous use year-round. 365 days without pause, without stepping back. For him, every day was a battle to uphold the Buff Daddy image fans expected. And this relentless drive made his body increasingly dependent, pushed ever closer to the breaking point. What's notable is that Buff Bagwell never hid it. On his personal YouTube channel, Marcus openly discussed everything he'd used, from his high school days to his WCW stardom. His stories weren't excuses or boasts but rather a bittersweet confession about the consequences this industry imposed. Buff was once a standout figure, but also a clear example of the heavy price paid for extraordinary muscularity. When the spotlight fades, what remains is not the punches thrown, but the lingering aftermath embedded deep in every muscle cell. 17. Edge. In 2002, Edge's career nearly ended after he suffered a severe neck injury. For a wrestler who relied on speed, agility, and high-risk moves, this wasn't just a workplace accident. It was a direct blow to the very style Edge had built his reputation on. He was forced to stay away from the ring for over a year, a long enough pause that fans began to doubt if the rated R superstar could ever make a comeback. Then he returned, still strong, sharp, and full of energy. But if you looked closely, you'd notice strange changes in Edge's physique. His biceps were thicker, his shoulders unusually broad, and his body appeared unnaturally stiff compared to before. Over the following months, his appearance continued to shift, despite Edge admitting he had stopped weight training during his recovery period. In 2005, he openly admitted to using steroids, not simply to build muscle but to speed up recovery from his neck injury. In an industry where time is money, returning quickly isn't just an honor, it's the key to survival. Edge didn't hide or make excuses. He straightforwardly acknowledged that he needed support. It's a harsh truth of the business. Sometimes recovering faster means paying a long-term price your body will eventually have to bear. 18. Kurt Angle. Unlike many of his peers, Kurt Angle didn't need steroids to look impressive. He was an Olympic champion, boasting an almost perfect physique when he first stepped into WWE. But his decision to use steroids wasn't about appearance, it was about pain. After breaking his neck 3 times and battling numerous injuries to his back and shoulders, Angle repeatedly came back faster than anyone else. Yet behind those comebacks were countless injections and prescriptions that allowed him to endure non-stop training and matches. Following his 3rd neck fracture in 2004, Angle began using performance aids, not to flaunt muscles but simply to survive. Over the years, Kurt's body gradually shrank. When he moved to TNA, he looked noticeably leaner. By 2011, to play a Russian MMA fighter in the movie Warrior, Angle even had to lose significant weight, something few former wrestlers dare to do out of fear of losing their iconic physique. Though less bulky than before, Angle maintained his athletic presence. Still, time took its toll. His arms showed signs of muscle atrophy and his walk was less steady. Yet Kurt Angle remains a symbol of a warrior who never gives up, even when the battle is against his own body. 19. Sting. If you followed Sting back in the 80s, you'd remember a man with bright blonde hair, bulging muscles, and a distinct California vibe, almost like a superhero straight off the beach. During that era, Sting was the perfect example of a bodybuilder transitioning into professional wrestling. Like many wrestlers of his time, he used performance enhancers to build his ideal physique, something rarely admitted publicly but widely practiced in the industry. The real turning point came in the mid-90s when Sting shed his colorful surfer Sting persona to become a darker icon, the Crow. This wasn't just a change in performance style, it marked a transformation in both lifestyle and physique. Sting moved away from the huge muscular image. He slimmed down and adopted a wrestling style focused more on psychology and technique. In TNA, Sting remained a major name, but his body had clearly changed. His frame was now more compact, without the flashy muscles he once showed off. The dark, full-body costume helped maintain his intimidating presence without needing to display any muscle. While many peers fought to keep a bulky appearance, Sting chose to adapt gracefully to aging, a calm yet powerful evolution. 20. The Ultimate Warrior. Sting and the Ultimate Warrior were once close allies, starting out together while struggling to find their place in the business. Both came from bodybuilding backgrounds, but only one pushed the limits of an extreme muscular appearance. That was Warrior. While Sting gradually stepped back from unrealistic body standards to focus on character storytelling, Warrior pushed his physique toward a superhuman level. His chest swelled out, arms nearly twice the size of his knees, shoulders like carved granite, and his explosive runs to the ring made audiences feel like he'd stepped out of another dimension where gravity and human physiology didn't apply. To maintain this surreal build, Warrior reportedly relied on steroids, a silent weapon that was part of wrestling's backstage reality at the time. From head to toe, he resembled a living muscle statue, always tense, constantly charged with energy. But the cost was high. His enormous size combined with an extreme lifestyle often led to serious health and mental struggles. Unlike Sting, who mellowed into a darker, calmer persona, Warrior kept his Mad Warrior image until the end. Loved or controversial, no one could forget his unreal physique and the thunderous presence he brought every time he stepped into the ring. And that wraps up our look at 20 WWE wrestlers who've been tied to steroid use. Some names may have shocked you, others may have confirmed long-held suspicions. But behind every accusation is a story of pressure, pain, expectations, and the brutal grind of the wrestling business. While WWE has made efforts to clean up its image with wellness policies and stricter testing, the scars of the steroid era still linger. At Wrestling Sphere, we don't judge, we dig deep, we remember, and we tell it like it is. If you learned something new today or just love exploring wrestling's hidden history, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. We've got more untold stories, shocking scandals, and unforgettable moments coming your way. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, in wrestling not everything is as clean-cut as it seems.